happened in part 4 of Help in the High Forest. But unlike part 3, there is a full archive of the actual play session on Twitch and YouTube Body View channels. You know, one of the places where you probably found this summary, so go listen to the whole thing. I'm not stopping you. But if you don't have 3 hours to spare, okay, here we go. In the housekeeping at the top of the session, I told the players that I'd forgotten to include one tidbit in the summary of part 3, which I remembered after I recorded that video. When the party questioned Lady Belafana about Sean the Hermit, after their little confrontation at the rest hut, she didn't know anything helpful. Hermits, they don't get out much. Not a lot of fodder for rumor. She did, however, know the phrase nest of retribution associated with him. I mentioned this so deliberately at the start of the session. Like, I'm mentioning it so deliberately right now. Like, one day, if we play long enough, it might really come up again. I don't know. I could also get distracted by Spelljammer or something. But maybe, I hope somebody made a note of it. It'll be fine. After everybody agreed they were physically, if not emotionally, prepared, we kicked off the session with Terrell competing in the Honeyfest Tug of War Final for a prize of 200 gold, split 4 ways. Like the qualifier that we had in session 2, it was a competition of contested strength checks. But to streamline things and make the math quicker, this time we did a 2 versus 2 roll off and didn't roll for every single NPC that was there. So Terrell's team was made up of herself, Stacey Greengrow, the 8-year-old halfling kid who wanted a unicorn pony. And then the opposing team is a group of lumberjacks. So Grim rolled for Terrell, of course. Kim rolled for CC Greengrow, while I rolled for Uncle Axel, and Rach rolled for Chopper. So it's 2 versus 2. They had equally matched strength modifiers between the two teams. To make it fair, since we weren't rolling for the other NPCs, it should have been suspenseful and topsy-turvy, where anybody's fortunes could turn on any roll. Except for Rachel's dice were on fire. The whole session, she rolled ridiculously high numbers. Like the tug of war was a complete runaway domination by the lumberjacks. And Terrell's team was dragged through the honey mud in ignoble defeat. The dice, I'm beginning to think they have in for Grim, because this is 2 sessions in a row where she's had, less than stellar results for a whole bunch of rolls. At the loss, little Cece Greengrow was disappointed about giving up her unicorn pony dream, and she started crying. Terrell, being a big softy, decides to give Cece 50 gold out of her own pocket money so she could buy the pony anyway, much to Cece's delight and her parents' dismay. Terrell, being super into personal hygiene, had to have a wash and polish after the tug of war final. While Yelena and Kai were waiting around for her to clean up, they witnessed Lady Belafana sell off most of her jewels to the halfling Jingo O. Jonas, who had a large inventory of fine jewelry wares for sale at his cart throughout the festival. They note that Jingo tucks Belafana's items away in his cart, and he doesn't put them up for sale. Next was the closing ceremony of Honeyfest and the raffle drawing for winged boots, which each player had a ticket for. Granted, I think Terrell and Kai only had a 1 in 100 chance of winning, and Yelena, thanks to Johanna's memory mishaps, had like a 1 in 20 chance of winning. But hey, better odds for winged boots than winning Mega Millions, so it was worth a shot. And they didn't win. Even Rach's dice supremacy failed in this instance. Terry didn't win either, and he had like 10 tickets. It was little Cece Greengrow who won. So this little 8-year-old halfling kid is having her best day, living her best life with a unicorn pony and flying boots, dressed in a little couture magical outfit that's a cross between a honeybee and a fairy. Yeah, the outfit was +1. Kai might have found it useful. It wasn't purple though. That might have been a deal breaker. Yes, armor class, but is it fashion? Well, now that's over, I feel like I can say I used Johanna's already established bad memory and distractibility. The raffle ticket duplications, Terry's cluelessness, the tombola being stored in the VIP tent that the players had access to as a hook in case the party wanted to do crimes and cheat at the raffle to get those flying boots. Like, I didn't actually put a real plot behind it. I just realized that with these characters being that the way they are, that there was plenty of opportunity for them to just have screwed it up, and the party, if they were of a mind to, could have taken advantage of that. I don't know why it didn't occur to me that they might assume a villain was responsible. It just didn't. But, and they just turned out to be such fine, upstanding citizens. In D&D, it's shock. I was shocked. I'm actually also surprised that the party didn't try to broker a deal for the flying boots off the kid or her parents either. Because an 8-year-old has no business, I mean, with flying boots. I wonder if it wasn't like a little fatalistic Gen X energy being like, whatever, with the raffle result, like we expect disappointment and just move on. But I bet if Terry had won the boots, Kai would have talked him out of them in a hot minute. So I don't know what to think. Terrell I get because Grimm's conscience has talked her out of shenanigans more than once, but I'm not sure why Kai and Yelena let that one go and let the kid just run off with the boots and be like, okay, well that's gonna end well. Maybe they just wanted out of town. Don't we all? They probably sensed my urgency to be done with Honeyfest too, so it's probably on me. Finally, Drusel made a speech recognizing Terrell, Yelena, and Kai as heroes of Ruchevert. And Jingo Jonah shows up again for jewelry related things as they are each presented with a gold brooch shaped like a bee. The party pretty quickly asks if these pins are magical. No, they're just commemorative. I mean, I guess they get a discount at inns and stores or something. It's kind of a key to the city thing, but like not in a DDO kind of way. It's just like in a hey, we like you, yay kind of way. I think the party was really hungry for magic items after the boot raffle fell through, though. That also reminds me that the party doesn't have detect magic yet, or like Kai only knows like murder spells. Kai is murder face and Rach is murder dice. It's like a perfect pairing. After the closing ceremony, Belafana approaches the party to confirm that they're definitely taking the job to escort the caravan to Parnast. She's occupied for the next day, finalizing who's coming with the caravan and buying livestock so the party has time to wrap up any loose business that they want to on that last day. The party is a little nonplussed when they realize that they've signed on to a cattle drive. I guess they thought it was going to be a couple nobles and carriages or something. This results in some discussion of their animal handling skills. Yelena is the only one who's proficient, but Belafana assures them there is a townsperson specifically coming along to handle the livestock. Plus, she's been talking to a guy who raises pigs about joining the caravan as well. Well, the party immediately clocks that B is talking about Terry. Oh, God. And they seem dismayed enough that Belafana asks them for their reference as to whether she should invite him as an animal handler and to move his pig ranch to Parnast. Terrell is a little dubious about this, but Kai stands up for his gambling buddy, and then B asks the party if they think Terry would be a good fit to come to Parnast to please encourage him. The party then revisits the pet rock marked with the symbol that Yelena bait and switched off of the dwarf baby during the baby contest the session before. They follow up with Ragnar Redtooth and confirm that it's the symbol of the cult of Black Earth. Yelena vaguely remembers that she grew up around Westbridge and that there was trouble with the cults of elemental evil there. part of the reason cultists are her favorite enemy, maybe. Maybe. She rolled really badly on our history check, y'all, at that juncture. So it's all like very wishy-washy, cloudy. Kai totally remembers that this cultist activity was stamped out at that time, and a prince of the earth elemental plane was defeated in the process. Ragnar is pretty ominous and shaken that the cultists might be regrouping in the shadows, but he's also a little drunk and maybe extra dramatic, so the party doesn't know what to think. This is a common theme. The party knows that the tabaxi named Russell, and that's Russell as in rustling leaves, not Russell Crowe. Sorry, my accent. Russell, who was giving away the pet rocks during the festival, had skipped town the night before. Yelena's a little concerned about walking around with a cult symbol. She doesn't want anyone to assume that she's affiliated. Kai thinks flashing the rock could come in handy down the line, maybe in a cult infiltration deception scenario. Yelena thinks that scenario would be like a pretty poor security for a super secret cult, but she decides to tuck the pet rock away in one of her green vest's super cool and useful pockets instead of tossing it. This seems to be another one of those things driving the party to question, is this our problem? Is this an actionable item? Should we put it on the quest scrum? They are undecided. The next morning, the party realizes that Sprinkles the owlbear has grown over the past month. She's almost too big to squeeze inside the inn's front door now. This drives Tyrell to cast Speak with Animals and have a heart-to-heart with the owlbear about her future. Johanna means well, but Tyrell is worried a grown owlbear is more than she can handle, and Sprinkles won't be happy living as a pet in the village. Terrell offers up the opportunity to come on the road, to look for Sprinkle's mom, or to look for more owlbears she can commune with. Sprinkles decides she wants to go as long as Terrell will teach her how to be brave, so she won't be afraid to return to the high forest. Terrell agrees, so after an emotional farewell with Johanna, the party now has an owlbear animal companion. To celebrate, Tyrell goes to the blacksmith and has Loranda Smithborn fashion barding for Sprinkles out of chainmail. Another sidebar. Adopting the owlbear caught me completely by surprise in the most delightful way. I don't know why. Like, when we did Arrowwing Hive of the High Forest, I introduced the baby owlbear thinking the party might like interacting with her, and I knew it was a possibility they might take control of the owlbear then, but that was a limited 4 session adventure, and while they talked to the owlbear and got a little invested in her story and healed her broken wing, they left her at the inn with Johanna. So 7 months later, when we decided to do a monthly game and the players decided to keep running their Harrowing Hive characters, I guess I just assumed that they weren't that into the owlbear and it was a done thread. It just surprised me that the random mention of Sprinkles as they were preparing to leave ended up in an adoption. It's like I planted a tomato seed and wandered off and forgot about it for a year and came back to find a bushel of ripe, delicious tomatoes and it's time for salsa. That's probably a bad analogy. Nobody's going to eat the owlbear. At least I hope nobody's going to eat the owlbear. Oh. Oh no. Dice camera action flashbacks. Okay, they run into Terry, who has just returned from poisoning the pickable plants like he promised. Loose end tied. Terry asks the party's advice as to whether he should go with the caravan. He feels like after his latest mess up with the pickable, he and his pigs need a fresh start. Kai tells him it's a good idea, plotting to win the gold Terry got for the bee race and a little gambling as soon as possible. The party is invited to a farewell tea at Drusel's cottage. He asks their advice about raising defenses around the village. The party encourages them to pursue more protection for Ruchevert given all the threats they've heard about in rumor. Drusel appears inspired, but his plan seems to involve reinforcing the village in ways that won't wreck its pastoral tranquility. Like, Drusel is the town's architectural committee. A committee of one. Less palisades, more treehouse watch posts. Drusel also encourages the party to return to Ruchevert once their work for Lady Belafana is complete. He feels his plans might require some work deeper in the high forest down the line. The last morning in Ruchevert, we learn about the party's early rise routines. Terrell does calisthenics, says her prayers, and trains with the dawn. Yelena is into yoga, greeting the morning with sun salutations. And Kai puts cucumber slices on his eyes, does a nice face mask, and has to relax to recover from the labor of waking up in the morning. It's pretty perfect. There was a tangent at this point talking about Tony the squirrel, wondering how long it'll take him to ferry their letter to Blossom Snow Beetle, the whole inquiry about selling the wyvern egg to the Emerald Enclave, all the way to Undercliff on his little stumpy squirrel legs. Then we discussed how Tony's a red squirrel, and how like gray squirrels in the real world that we have in the southern United States invaded England and chased all the red squirrels off to Scotland. I mean, it makes sense. Ginger squirrels would totally dig Scotland. And then we talked about how black squirrels, the goth squirrels, stick to the northeastern United States, probably because that's Gotham and the Lovecraftian vibes in Massachusetts fit their goth squirrel aesthetic. There was a lot of squirrel talk. This is a squirrel heavy campaign. The caravan convenes to leave for Parnast. The party is introduced to some NPCs that are traveling all the way, in addition to Terry, Lord Jomont, Lady Belafana, and Ragnar. There is Badger Sweeney, a dwarf mason, Daisy Brownbank, a farmer who is also a skilled carpenter, Charmandy Little, Daisy's fiance, who was a barmaid in Ruchevert, so she has some skills with brewing supplies, but she's also a weaver at heart, and she's going to be involved with the silkworm project Lady Belafana has planned. Noodles Fabian is another NPC. He's a tall, lanky halfling who's managing the livestock drive. He's the guy in charge of the cows. And there's also some suggestion that he can wild shape and he's a druid. Which reminds me, Grimm said Terrell will be multiclassing as a druid in the future. So, I mean, there's so many characters here totally in tune with nature. Except Kai and Lord Jomont. Yeah, both of them, both those guys, they're kind of fancy boys. Lord Jomont has 7 retainers, in addition traveling with the caravan. Terrell clocks that one of them looks to be a veteran, and then there's like 4 soldiers that are a lot more green. And then there's 2 scouts. The scouts are the most notable in appearance. One is a half orc named Cal who is wearing woods camouflage, like one of those ponchos studded with underbrush and grass so he blends in with the forest. But Cal wears it all the time, like shrubbery in the living room kind of guy. The the other scout is a tiefling ranger whose thick horns have grown down her back and she's hollowed them out to use as quivers, which is also her namesake, Quiver. There's a brief exchange as the armored owlbear is introduced to the caravan. Belafon is fine with it. I mean, she has a secret wyvern, so she's not going to say boo. Lord Jomont was a little more wary about the logistics of traveling with an owlbear. I mean, he wasn't aggressive about it, just a little flummoxed, but Terrell was not having it. Like, the slightest raised eyebrow from Jomont about this owlbear blotted his copybook. He was in so much trouble. The first location the caravan passes on the road is Sidelake, which seems to have started some construction over the past month to build a formal spa resort. Jingo Jonas splits off from the caravan at this point at Sidelake. That's apparently his home. And Kai and Yelena notice when the wind blows up the tarp covering his cart, the cart that he used as the jewelry stand during Honeyfest. It's now completely empty. All of the wares that Jingo was selling, the jewelry that they saw him buy from Belafana, none of it was in the back of the cart. Hmm. They also observed some guests arriving at Side Lake Spa from the opposite direction of traffic, specifically a tiefling with buck antler horns. And his two kids are checking in for some glamping and relaxation at the hot springs. The caravan keeps moving and later camps for the night by the roadside, halfway between Ulavan and Sidelake. The caravan is quite large between the wagons and the livestock and the extra folk who haven't split off toward their final destination yet. So there are extended circles of wagons. Some of Jumont's soldiers are set to guarding the livestock in the southernmost part of the camp, while the party takes on a shift at midnight, keeping watch over the northern camp. In the wee hours of the morning, the party spots Bellafana sneaking off again. Caught, she confesses she's meeting up with Euphoria outside of camp, making sure that her wyvern is okay and doing a little flying scout of her own. Shortly after this, Yelena detects another movement, this one among the rocks bordering the camp to the north. The party approaches stealthily. Well, Terrell and Yelena do. Kai is apparently napping through guard duty using sprinkles as a pillow or something. And Terrell is distracted, still thinking about how mad she is that Jomont had the audacity to say anything about her owlbear friend and wasn't really spotting trouble. But Yelena totally picks out that there are several goblins crawling among the rocks. Dum dum dum. Roll for initiative. And that's where we left off the episode. Session 5 will pick up with combat versus the intruders. So join us for the next session of Help in the High Forest on August 20th from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/bodyview, where hopefully there will be sound and a working push-to-talk layout and maybe even Sirenscape music. I know. Careful, Icarus. I'm flying too close to the sun with this fancy shit. We shall see.